Chapter Slyine. Of the second pieces of advice that Don Quixote gave to Sancho Panza. Who would listen to the past reasoning of Don Quixote, who did not consider him to be a very sane and well-intentioned person? But, as many times in the progress of this great history it has been said, he only shot in touching him in the cavalry, and in the other speeches he showed to have a clear and carefree understanding, so that at each step his works discredited his judgment. As regards how you are to govern yourself and your house, Sancho, the first thing I charge you with is to be clean, and to cut your nails without letting them grow. Don't walk, Sancho, disheveled and loose, for his decomposed dress gives indications of an untidy spirit. Discreetly take the pulse of what your office may be worth, and if it suffers that you give your servants free livery, give it to them honest and profitable rather than showy and bizarre, and distribute it among your servants and the poor. I mean that if you have to wear 6 pages, you saw 3 and other 3 poor, and thus you will have pages for the sky and for the ground. Do not eat garlic or onions, because they do not bring out your villainy by the smell. Go slowly, speak calmly, but not in such a way that it seems that you are listening to yourself, that all affectation is bad. Eat little and eat less, because the health of the whole body is forged in the office of the stomach. Be temperate in drinking, considering that too much wine neither keeps a secret nor keeps a word. Keep in mind, Sancho, not to chew 2 cheeks, nor to burp in front of anyone. Also, Sancho, you don't have to mix in your talks the multitude of proverbs that you usually do, that, since proverbs are short sentences, many times you bring them so by the hair, that they seem more nonsense than sentences. Look, Sancho, I'm not telling you that a proverb brought up on purpose seems bad, but loading and stringing proverbs at random mosh makes the talk faint and low. Never begin to dispute lineages, at least comparing them to each other, because, necessarily, in those that are compared, one must be the best, and the one you bring down will be hated, and the one you raise will not be rewarded in any way. But what use are they, if I can't remember any of them? I do not remember or will remember any more of them than of the clouds of old, and so it will be necessary that they be given to me in writing, which, since I do not know how to read or write, I will give them to my confessor so that he can lace them for me and reconsider when necessary. Ah, sinner that I am, responded Don Quixote, and how bad it seems for governors not to know how to read or write. Great fault is the one that you carry with you, and thus, I would like you to learn to even sign. I assure you that these proverbs will lead you one day to the gallows, for them your vassals must take away your government, or there must be communities among them. Let's leave this here, Sancho, because if you govern badly, it will be your fault, and mine the shame, but console me that I have done what I should in advising you truthfully and with as much discretion as possible. With this I depart from my obligation and my promise. Sir, replied Sancho, if it seems to your worship that I'm not in favor of this government, I'll let you know from here, because I love one single negro from the nail of my soul more than my whole body, and thus I will sustain myself Sancho to dry with bread and onion, like governor with partridges and capons, that I don't know more about island governments than a vulture, and if he imagines that because I'm governor the devil has to take me, Sancho wants me to go to heaven more than governor. To hell. By God, Sancho, said Don Quixote, for these last reasons alone that you have said, I judge that you deserve to be governor of 1,000 islands. You have a good nature, without which there is no science worth. Entrust yourself to God, and try not to err in the first intention. I want to say that you always have the intent and firm intention of succeeding in as many businesses as may occur to you, because heaven always favors good wishes. Chapter XLIV. How Sancho Panza was taken to the government, and of the strange adventure that befell Don Quixote in the castle. Don Quixote finishing eating, the day he gave the advice to Sancho, that afternoon he gave it to him in writing, so that he could find someone to read it to him, but he had scarcely given them to him when they fell from his hands and came into the hands of the Duke, who communicated them with the Duchess, and the two marveled again at Don Quixote's madness and ingenuity, and so, continuing their jokes, that afternoon they sent Sancho with a lot of company to the place that for him had to be an insula. It happened, then, that the one who was in charge of him was a butler of the Duke, who had acted in the person of Countess Trifaldi, with the grace that remains mentioned. Sir, your worship must confess to me that the face of this Duke's butler, who is here, is the same as that of La Dolorita. There's no reason for the devil to take you, Sancho, neither a just man nor a believer. I don't know what you mean, that the face of La Dolorita is that of the butler, but that is not why the butler is La Dolorita. It's not a mockery, sir, but I heard him speak beforehand, and it seemed that Trifaldi's voice was ringing in my ears. Now then, I will keep quiet, but I will not stop being warned from now on. Bidding farewell to the dukes, he kissed their hands, and took the blessing of his lord, who gave it to him with tears, and Sancho received it pouting. Tell it, then, that as soon as Sancho had left, when Don Quixote felt his loneliness, and if it were possible for him to revoke his commission and take away his government, he would do it. The Duchess recognized her melancholy, and asked him what he was sad about, that if it was due to Sancho's absence, that there were squires, duennas, and maidens in his house who would serve him very much to the satisfaction of his wishes. I implore your excellency to consent in my room and allow me to be the only one to serve me. Let me deal with myself, and that I use my doors inside, that I put a wall in the middle of my desires and my honesty. No more, Señor Don Quixote, replied the Duchess. For myself I say that I will give order that not even a fly enters his room. Well now, Señor Don Quixote, replied the Duchess, dinner time is coming, and the Duke must wait. Come, your grace, and let us have dinner, and you will go to bed early. Again Don Quixote gave new graces to the Duchess, and, at dinner, Don Quixote retired to his room alone. He closed the door behind him, and by the light of 2 wax candles he undressed, and when he took off his shoes, O disgrace unworthy of such a person, he let out, not sighs, or anything else, that would discredit the cleanliness of his pelisse. Although I know well, from the communication I have had with Christians, that holiness consists of charity, humility, faith, obedience, and poverty, but, with all that, I say that he who comes to content himself with being poor must have a lot of God, if it is not in that way of poverty of which one of his greatest saints says, keep all things as if you did not you had, and this they call poverty of spirit. But you, second poverty, that you are the one I speak of, why do you want to crash with the hidalgos and well-born more than with other people? All of this was renewed for Don Quixote in the looseness of his points, but he consoled himself to see that Sancho had left him some boots on the way, which he intended to put on another day. He killed the candles, he was hot and couldn't sleep. He got up from his bed and opened a little the window of a gate that looked out on a beautiful garden, and, opening it, he felt and heard that people were walking and talking in the garden. Don't push me, O Emerencia. Let me sing, because you know that, from the point that this stranger entered this castle and my eyes looked at him, I don't know how to sing, but cry. What's more, my lady's dream is more light than heavy, and I wouldn't want her to find us here for all the treasure in the world. Don't give in to that, Altisidora friend, they answered, for without a doubt the Duchess and all those in that house are sleeping. That is not the point, but that I would not want my song to discover my heart and be judged by those who are unaware of the powerful forces of love for a capricious and light maiden. But come what may, it is better shame on the face than stain on the heart. And, in this, he felt playing a harp very softly. Then he imagined that some maid of the Duchess was in love with her, and that her honesty forced her to keep her will secret. She feared she would not give in, and, to make it understood that she was there, she gave a faint sneeze, which the maidens were not a little happy about, since they wanted nothing more than for Don Quixote to hear them. Here the song of the ill-fated Altisidora ended, and the astonishment of the required Don Quixote began, who, giving a great sigh, said among himself, I must be so unfortunate walking, that there should be no maiden to look at me. Don't fall in love with me. Look, loving crowd, that for Dulcinea alone I am made of dough and alfanique, and for all the others I am of flint. Cry or sing Altisidora, despair. Madam, for whom I was beaten in the castle of the enchanted Moor, that I must be from Dulcinea. And with this he slammed the window shut, and, spiteful and sorrowful, as if some great misfortune had befallen him, he lay down on his bed. Chapter XLV. How the great Sancho Panza took possession of the island from him, and how he began to rule. I say, then, that with all his accompaniment Sancho arrived at a place of up to 1,000 neighbors, which was one of the best that the Duke had. They gave him to understand that it was called the Barataria Island. The town regiment came out to meet him, the bells rang, and all the neighbors gave signs of general joy. Then, with some ridiculous ceremonies, they handed him the keys to the town, and admitted him as perpetual governor of the island of Barataria. Finally, on taking him out of the church, they took him to the court chair and sat him on it, and the Duke's butler said to him, it is an ancient custom in this island, Mr. Governor, that whoever comes to take possession of this famous island is obliged to answer a question put to him, which is somewhat intricate and difficult, whose response the people take and feel the pulse of the ingenuity of their new governor, and so he is either glad or sad at his coming. Go ahead with his question, Mr. Mayordomo, and I'll answer the best I can. The bystanders were once again amazed at the trials and sentences of their new governor. Chapter XLVI. Of the fearful cowbell and cat-like fright that Don Quixote received in the speech of the loves of the enamored Altisidora. We left the great Don Quixote wrapped in the thoughts that the music of the enamored maiden Altisidora had caused him. As he passed through a gallery, Altisidora and the other maiden, her friend, were waiting for him, and just as Altisidora saw Don Quixote, she pretended to faint, and her friend picked her up on her lap. Don Quixote said, I know where these accidents come from. I don't know why, answered the friend, because Altisidora is the healthiest maiden in this whole house, and I've never felt her say whoa. As long as I've known her. May your worship, madam, have a lute placed for me in my room tonight, and I will comfort this injured maiden as best I can. It will be necessary for her to put the lute on her, for without a doubt Don Quixote wants to give us music, and she will not be bad, since she is his. And she, exceedingly cheerful, agreed with the Duke and his maidens to make a mockery of her that was more laughing than hurtful. And the Duchess that day really and truly dispatched a page of hers, who had made the enchanted figure of Dulcinea in the jungle, Teresa Panza, with the letter from her husband Sancho Panza, and with the bundle of clothes he had left for her to wear, was sent to him. This done, and at 11 o'clock at night, Don Quixote found a vivula in his room. He tempered it, opened the gate, and felt that people were walking in the garden. And then, in a hoarse though intoned voice, he sang the following romance. Dulcinea del Toboso del Alma, on the blank slate I have painted in such a way that it is impossible to erase it. Firmness in lovers is the most precious part, for whom love makes miracles, and also raises them up. Don Quixote arrived here from his song, to whom the Duke and Duchess, Altisidora, and almost all the people of the castle were listening, when suddenly, from above a corridor that fell over Don Quixote's iron gate, they lowered a cord where more than 100 cowbells came clutching, and then, after them, they spilled a large sack of cats, which also had smaller cowbells tied to their tails. Don Quixote was stunned. And as luck would have it, 2 or 3 cats entered through the gate of his room. They put out the candles that were burning in the room, and they were looking for a way to escape. Don Quixote rose to his feet and, putting his hand on his sword, began to stab through the grate and say in a loud voice, "Get out, evil enchanters! Get out, sorcererous scoundrel, for I am Don Quixote de la Mancha, against whom your bad intentions are worthless and have no force." And, turning to the cats that were walking about the room, he stabbed them many times. They went to the gate, and that's where they got out, although one, seeing himself so harassed by Don Quixote's knives, jumped at his face and grabbed him by the nose with his nails and teeth, for whose pain Don Quixote began to give the loudest screams he could. Hearing which the Duke and Duchess, and considering what it might be, very quickly went to his room, and, opening with a master key, they saw the poor gentleman struggling with all his might to tear the cat from his face. "Don't take anyone away from me. Let me hand in hand with this demon, with this sorcerer, with this enchanter, that I will make him understand from me who Don Quixote de la Mancha is." But the cat, not curing himself of these threats, growled and squeezed. But, finally, the Duke uprooted him and threw him through the gate. They had oil brought from Aparicio, and Altisidora herself, with her very white hands, put some bandages on everything that was injured, and, putting them on, she said to him in a low voice, "All these misdeeds happen to you, inveterate knight, because of the sin of your harshness and pertinacity, and pray to God that Sancho your squire forgets to whip himself, because Dulcinea, this beloved of yours, never leaves her enchantment, nor do you enjoy it, nor do you reach a bedchamber with her, at least as long as I live, who adore you." Don Quixote did not reply another word to all this except to take a deep breath. The dukes let him calm down, and left, sorry for the bad event of the mockery, that they did not believe how heavy and costly this adventure would turn out for Don Quixote, which cost him 5 days of confinement and bed. Chapter Slay, where it continues how Sancho Panza behaved in his government. The story tells that from the court they took Sancho Panza to a sumptuous palace, where a royal and very clean table was set in a large room, and just as Sancho entered the room, shams sounded, and 4 pages came out to give him water, which Sancho received very gravely. Sancho sat down at the head of the table. A personage stood by his side, who afterwards revealed himself to be a doctor. They raised a delicious and white towel with which the fruits and a great diversity of dishes of various delicacies were covered. Seen by Sancho, he was left in suspense, and, looking at everyone, he asked if he was going to eat that food as a mee-squirrel game. To which the man with the stick responded, "You must not eat, Mr. Governor, except as is customary on the other islands where there are governors. I, sir, am a doctor, and I am salaried in this island to be one of its governors, and I look after her health much more than mine. The main thing I do is attend his lunches and dinners, and to let him eat what I think is good for him, and to take away what I imagine will hurt him and be harmful to his stomach. And so, it is my opinion that your worship should not eat those stewed rabbits that are there, because it is a sticky delicacy. If it weren't roasted and marinated, that veal could still be tasted, but there's no reason why. But what I know the governor has to eat now, to preserve his health and corroborate it, is 100 strings of supplications and a few thin slices of quince meat, to settle his stomach and help his digestion." Well, Mr. Dr. Pedro Recio de Malaguero, a native of Tertifura, a place on the right-hand side as we go from Caracuel to Almodovar del Campo, graduated in Osuna, then get out of my way. If not, I vote for the son to take a club, and that with clubbing, starting with him, I won't be left with a doctor in the entire island, at least not of those I understand to be ignorant, that I will put wise, prudent, and discreet doctors on my head and honor them as divine persons. And give me something to eat, or if not, take control of it, for a job that doesn't feed its owner isn't worth 2 beans. The doctor got excited, seeing the governor so angry, and wanted to make a fuss out of the room, but at that moment a post bugle sounded in the street. "Mail comes from the Duke, my lord, some office must bring important." He entered the mail sweating and frightened, and, taking a sheet of paper from his chest, he put it in the hands of the governor, and Sancho put it in those of the mayordomo, whom he ordered to read the overwriting. And, having read what he said it was business to treat him alone. That was how he said, "My news has arrived, Mr. Don Sancho Panza, that some enemies of mine and the island are going to give it a furious assault. I don't know what night. It is advisable to watch and be alert, so that they do not take you unnoticed. I also know, from true spies, that 4 persons disguised have entered that place to take your life, because they fear your ingenuity. Open your eyes, and see who comes to speak to you, and do not eat anything that is presented to you. I will take care to help you if you find yourself at work, and in everything you will do as expected from your understanding. Your friend, the Duke." What has to be done now, and has to be done later, is to put Dr. Recchio in a dungeon, because if someone is going to kill me, it has to be him, and a terrible death, such as that of hunger. "Also," said the Maestre Sala, "it seems to me that your worship does not eat everything that is on this table, because some nuns have presented it, and, as they say, behind the cross is the devil. And you, secretary, answer my lord the Duke and tell him that what he commands will be done as he commands, without missing a point." At this a page entered, and said, "Here is a merchant farmer who wishes to speak to your lordship in a business, according to what he says, of great importance." And, in this, the farmer entered, who was of very good appearance, and from 1,000 leagues he could be seen that he was good and a good soul. "I, sir, am a farmer, a native of Miguel, a place that is 2 leagues from Ciudad Real. I, by the mercy of God, am married in peace and in union with the Holy Roman Catholic Church. I have 2 student children, the youngest is studying for high school and the oldest for a graduate degree. I am a widower, because my wife died, or, to put it better, a bad doctor killed her. That my son, who is to be a high school graduate, fell in love in the same town with a maiden named Clara Pearlrina, daughter of Andres Pearlrino, a very rich farmer, and this name of Pearl Aarons does not come from lineage or any other lineage, but because all of this lineage are pearl sent. I would like, sir, that your grace do me the mercy of giving me a letter of favor for my in-law, begging him to be served that this marriage takes place, since we are not unequal in the goods of fortune, nor in those of nature. I say, sir, that I would like your grace to give me 300 or 600 ducats to help with the dowry of my bachelor's degree. I say to help set up his house, because, in the end, they have to live by themselves, without being subject to the impertinence of their in-laws. I vote to such and such, Mr. Rustic and ill-regarded lout, that if you don't move away and then hide from my presence, that with this chair I will break your head open. Hide Pitta miscreant, painter of the devil himself, and at this time you come to ask me for 600 ducats, and where do I have them, stinky, and why should I give them to you, even if I had them, you sly and goofy? And what about Miguel Tura, or the entire lineage of the Pearl Aarons? It's about me, I say, if not, for the life of the Duke my lord, let him do what I have said. You must not belong to Miguel Tura, but rather some sarcastic who, to tempt me, has sent you here to hell." The Maestre Sala signaled to the farmer to leave the room, who did so with his head down and, apparently, fearful that the governor would not carry out his anger, since the rascal knew how to do his job very well. Chapter 8. Of what happened to Don Quixote with Dona Rodriguez, the Duchess's mistress, with other events worthy of writing and eternal memory. Furthermore, the ill-wounded Don Quixote was grumpy and melancholic, his face bandaged and marked, not by the hand of God, but by the claws of a cat, misfortunes associated with errant cavalry. 6 days he was without going out in public. On one of those nights, she felt that with a key they opened the door of her room, and then she imagined that the enamored maiden came to startle her honesty and put her in a condition to miss the fee that she owed her mistress Dulcinea del Toboso. He fixed his eyes on her door, and, when he expected to see the exhausted and injured Altisidora enter through it, he saw a very reverend owner enter with a long, slouched white head-dress. She came stepping softly, and moved her feet softly. Don Quixote looked at her from her watchtower, and when he saw her dress and noticed her silence, he thought that some witch or magician was coming in that costume to do some evil deed on him, and he began to cross himself very quickly. The vision was coming, and when he reached the middle of the room, he raised his eyes and saw the haste with which Don Quixote was making crosses. Jesus! What do I see? And with his start the candle fell from his hands, and, seeing himself in the dark, he turned his back to go, and with fear tripped on his lap and took a great fall with him. Don Quixote, fearful, began to say, "Conjure yourself, ghost, or what you are, tell me who you are, and tell me what you want from me." "Señor Don Quixote, if perhaps your grace is Don Quixote, I am not a ghost, nor a vision, nor a soul in purgatory, as your grace must have thought, but Dona Rodriguez, the honorable mistress of my lady the Duchess. And, without waiting for an answer, she left the room, where Don Quixote remained, calm and thoughtful, waiting for her, and he said to himself, who knows if the devil, who is subtle and crafty, will want to deceive me now with a duenna, which I don't know. Has he been able to with empresses, queens, duchesses, marchionesses, or countesses? But I must not be in my judgment, because such nonsense I say and think, that it is not possible for a Toquiblanca, long and Antojuna owner to be able to move or raise lascivious thoughts in the most heartless chest in the world. By any chance, is there an owner on earth who has good meat? And, saying this, he threw himself from the bed, with the intention of closing the door and not letting Mrs. Rodriguez enter, but, when he came to close it, Mrs. Rodriguez was already coming back. And so, I ask if I am safe from being attacked and forced. From whom or to whom do you ask, Sir Knight, this security? Replied the owner. I ask of you and of you, replied Don Quixote, because I am neither made of marble nor you of bronze, nor is it now 10 o'clock in the day, but rather midnight. But give me your hand, madam, for I don't want any other security greater than that of my continence and modesty, and that offered by those most reverend head dresses. And, saying this, he kissed her right hand, and took hold of hers, which she gave him with the same ceremonies. Your worship can now, my lady, Dona Rodriguez, unravel and unravel everything that you have inside her careful heart and her wounded entrails. This is the case, Señor Don Quixote. I am a native of the Asturias de Oviedo. My parents left me serving and returned to their land, and after a few years they must have gone to heaven. I was left an orphan, and dependent on the miserable salary and the anguished favors that such maids are usually given in the palace. And, at this time, without my giving it an opportunity, a house squire fell in love with me, a man already in days, bearded and personified. We did not treat our love so secretly that they did not come to the notice of my lady, who, to excuse dimes and dieties, married us in peace and in honor of the Holy Mother Roman Catholic Church, from whose marriage a daughter was born to finish off with my fortune. From there my husband died of a certain fright that he had. And, at this, she began to cry tenderly. When entering the street of Santiago, in Madrid, which is somewhat narrow, a court mayor came out of it with 2 bailiffs in front of him, and, just as my good squire saw him, he returned the reins to the mule, giving a signal to accompany him again. My wife, who was on her haunches, in a low voice said to her, "What are you doing, wretch? Can't you see I'm coming here?" The mayor, out of restraint, stopped the horse's reins and told him, "Follow your path, sir, for I am the one who must accompany my lady Dona Casilda, which was my mistress's name." My husband still insisted, with cap in hand, wanting to go with the mayor, seeing which my wife, full of rage and anger, took a fat pin, or I think an awl, from the case, and stabbed her in the back. So that my husband gave a loud voice and twisted his body, so that he hit his wife on the ground. My mistress came on foot, and my husband went to a barber's house saying that he had passed his entrails from one side to the other. My husband's courtesy was spread to such an extent that the boys ran after him through the streets, and for this and because he was somewhat short-sighted, my lady the Duchess dismissed him, from whose regret, without a doubt, I have for myself that he was inflicted with the evil of death. I was left a widow and abandoned, and with a daughter in tow. Finally, as I had a reputation as a great farmer, my lady the Duchess, who was newly married to my lord the Duke, wanted to bring me with her to this kingdom of Aragon and my daughter no more no less, where, going days and days coming, she grew up my daughter, and with her all the grace in the world. In short, with this my girl fell in love a son of a very rich farmer who is in a village of the Duke my lord, not far from here. In fact, I don't know how or how not, they got together, and, under the word of being her husband, he mocked my daughter, and he doesn't want to keep it. And, although the Duke my lord knows it, because I have complained to him, not once, but many times, and asking him to send that farmer to marry my daughter, he makes the ears of a merchant and hardly wants to hear me. I would like, then, my lord, that your worship take charge of undoing this offense, either by prayers, or by arms. Hardly had Don Quixote finished saying this reason, when with a great bang they opened the doors of the room, and from the shock of the blow, the candle fell from Dona Rodriguez's hand, and the room was like a pitchfork, as they say. Then the poor owner felt that they grabbed her by the throat with 2 hands, so strongly that they did not let her yelp, and that another person, very quickly, without speaking a word, lifted her skirts, and with one, apparently, slipper, he began to give him so many lashes, that it was a pity. They went to Don Quixote and, unwrapping him from the sheet and the quilt, they pinched him so often and so hard that he could not help defending himself with his fists, and all this in admirable silence. The battle lasted almost half an hour, the ghosts came out, Dona Rodriguez picked up his skirts, and, moaning at his misfortune, went out the door without saying a word to Don Quixote, who, painful and pinched, confused and pensive, was left alone. Chapter XLIX. Of what happened to Sancho Panza while haunting his island. We left the great angry and sulky governor with the painter and sly farmer. Now that I truly understand that the judges and governors must be, or have to be, made of bronze, so as not to feel the importunities of the businessmen, who at all times want to be listened to and dispatched. Foolish businessman, don't rush, wait for the season and situation to negotiate, do not come at mealtime or bedtime, for judges are made of flesh and blood and must give nature what it naturally asks of them. Finally, Dr. Pedro Recio Aguero from Tertifuro promised to give him dinner that night. Look, Mr. Doctor, from now on, don't worry about giving me gifts or exquisite delicacies to eat, because it will drive my stomach out of its hinges, which is accustomed to goat, cow, bacon, jerky, turnips, and onions. What the maestre Sala can do is bring me what they call rotten pots. The more rotten they are, the better they smell. Let's go around. It is my intention to clean this island of all kinds of filth and vagrant, lazy, and poorly entertained people, because I want you to know, friends, that the idle and lazy people in the Republic are the same as the drones in the hives, who eat the honey that the hard-working bees make. I intend to favor the farmers, keep their preeminence to the hidalgos, reward the virtuous and, above all, have respect for religion and the honor of the religious. Night came, and the governor dined, with permission from Dr. Recio. And he hadn't wanted to give him more than 4 reals because he gave them to him many times, and those who wait cheaply must be restrained and take what they are given with a happy face, without putting themselves in accounts with the profiteers. As he used to say, there was none greater than not having wanted to give them anything. Now, I will be able to do little, or I will remove these gaming houses, which seem to me to be very harmful. This one, at least, said a clerk, your grace will not be able to take away, because a great character has it, and what he loses a year is more incomparable than what he draws from the cards. And, since the vice of gambling has become a common exercise, it is better that it be played in main houses than in that of some official, where they catch an unfortunate man from midnight below and skin him alive. But I advise you not to make fun of justice from now on, because you will run into one that will hit you with the mockery on the helmets. The young man went, and the governor continued with his rounds, and shortly thereafter 2 brackets came carrying a man by their arms, and said, Mr. Governor, this one who looks like a man is not, but a woman, and not ugly, who she comes dressed in a man's habit. It's the case, gentlemen, she replied, that my father has kept me locked up for 10 years, which are the same years my mother eats the earth. I don't even know what streets, squares, or temples are, or even men, apart from my father and a brother of mine, and Pedro Perez the landlord. This confinement and this refusal to leave the house, even to church, has been very disconsolate for many days and months. I would like to see the world. My misfortune is none other, nor is my misfortune any other than that I begged my brother to dress me in a man's habit with one of his dresses and to take me out one night to see the whole town, when our father was asleep. Nothing has happened to me, nor have they made me jealous, only the desire to see the world, which only extended to seeing the streets of this place. Let's go, and we'll leave your Mercedes at his father's house, perhaps he will not have missed them. And, from now on, do not appear so childish, nor so eager to see the world, then the honest maiden, the broken leg, and at home, and the woman and the hen, by walking they get lost Ana, and the one she is willing to see, she also has a desire to be seen. They arrived, then, and, the brother throwing a china at a gate, at once a maid came down, who was waiting for them, and opened the door for them, and they entered. The maestre Sala was pierced by her heart, and immediately proposed another day to ask her father for a wife, knowing that he would not deny her, as he was the duke's servant. And even Sancho had desires and thoughts of marrying the young man to Sanchica, his daughter, and decided to discuss it at his own time, implying that no husband could be denied to a governor's daughter. Chapter L. Where it is declared who were the enchanters and executioners who whipped the duenna and pinched and scratched Don Quixote, with the incident of the page who brought the letter to Teresa Sancha, Sancho Panza's wife. At the time that Dona Rodriguez left her room to go to Don Quixote's room, another duenna who slept with her felt it, and who, like all duennas are friends of knowing, understanding and smelling, went after her, with so much silence, that the good Rodriguez did not notice it, and, just as the duenna saw her enter Don Quixote's room, because she did not lack the general habit that all duennas have of being gossips, at once she went to tell her mistress the Duchess how Dona Rodriguez stayed in Don Quixote's room. The Duchess told the Duke, and asked permission for her and Altisidora to come see what that duenna wanted with Don Quixote. The Duke gave it to her, and the two, with great care and calm, step by step, came to stand by the door of the room, and so close that they heard everything that was said inside, and when the Duchess heard that Rodriguez had thrown orange-ways from her fountain into the street, she couldn't bear it, least of all Altisidora, and so, full of rage and desirous of revenge, they burst into the room, riddled Don Quixote with bullets and beat up the owner in the way that has been told. The Duchess told the Duke what had happened to her, about which she was very pleased, and the Duchess, continuing with her intention of making fun of and entertaining Don Quixote, dispatched the page who had made the figure of Dulcinea at her concert. Disenchantment. The story says, then, that the page was very discreet and acute, and, with a desire to serve his master, he willingly left for Sancho's place, and, before entering it, she saw a number of women washing in a stream, to whom she asked if they could tell her if a woman named Teresa Panza lived in that place. And she said, "That Teresa Panza is my mother, and that Sancho, my father, and that gentleman, our master." "Then come, maiden," said the page, "and show me your mother, for I bring her a letter and a present from your father." At whose voices Teresa Panza, her mother, came out, spinning a flake of tow, wearing a brown skirt. "Your Grace," replied the page, "she is a most worthy woman of a most worthy governor, and, as proof of this truth, your Grace receive this letter and this present. This letter is from the governor, and another that I bring, and these quarrels are from my lady the Duchess, who sends me to your mercy." "This is the truth," replied the page, "that, out of respect for Señor Don Quixote, Señor Sancho is now governor of the Barataria Island, as will be seen from this letter." And so, he read it all. And then he brought out another from the Duchess, which read as follows: "Friend Teresa, the good parts of your husband Sancho's goodness and ingenuity moved me and forced me to ask my husband the Duke to give him a government of an island, of many. What's wrong with it? I want Señora Teresa to know that it is difficult to find a good governor in the world, and God do the same to me as Sancho governs. There I send you, my dear, a string of corals with ends of gold. Entrust me to Sanchica, her daughter, and tell her for me to get ready, that I have to marry her highly when you least expect it. They tell me that there are fat acorns in that place, send me up to 24, which I will estimate very highly, since they are from your hand, and write me at length, advising me of your health and well-being. Her friend, who loves her well." The Duchess. "Oh," Teresa said on hearing the letter, "and what a good and flat and humble lady. With these ladies, bury me, and not the hidalgas that are used in this town, who think that because they are hidalgas the wind should not touch them, and they go to church with as much fantasy as if they were the queens themselves, that it does not seem that they have dishonor to look at a farmer. They'll also be happy," said the page, "when they see the mess that comes with this portmanteau, which is a dress of the finest cloth that the governor only took one day hunting, which he all sends to Mrs. Sanchica." And, perhaps meeting the priest and Sanson Carrasco, she began to dance and say, "A fee now that there is no poor relative. We have a government. No, but take with me the most painted hidalga, that I will make it as good as new. Okay, now, we are going to see the bearer of this document, and from him we will be informed of the difficulties that are offered to us." Samson asked him to tell them news about both Don Quixote and Sancho Panza. That Mr. Sancho Panza is governor, there is no doubt about it, of whether or not he is the island that governs, I do not interfere in that. Mr. Priest, take a taste if there is someone who goes to Madrid, or to Toledo, to buy me a round executioner, full-fledged, and be it to use and one of the best there is, that truly, truly, I have to honor my husband's government as much as I can, and even if he gets angry, I have to go to that court, and take a car, like everyone else, that the one who has a governor husband can very well bring him and sustain him. That your Grace still affirms, my lord, said the bachelor, that this is true of Sancho's government, and that there is a duchess in the world who sends you gifts and writes to you. Gentlemen, I don't know any more about myself, replied the page, other than that I am a true ambassador, and that Mr. Sancho Panza is an effective governor, and that my lords the Duke and Duchess can give, and have given, such a government. The truth is what I have said, and this truth must always walk on top of lies, like oil on water. Let one of your Mercedes take revenge on me, and they will see with their eyes what they do not believe with their ears. To which the priest said, Your worship will come to do penance with me, for Mrs. Teresa has more will than jewelry to serve such a good guest. Only the page refused, but, in fact, he had to grant it for his improvement, and the priest willingly took him with him, to have room to ask him for space about Don Quixote and his exploits. The bachelor offered to write the letters to Teresa of the response, but she did not want the bachelor to get into her things, that she thought he was somewhat mocking, and so, she gave a bun and 2 eggs to an altar boy who knew how to write, who wrote her 2 letters, one for her husband and one for the Duchess, noted from the same calligraphy as hers. Chapter Li. Of the progress of the government of Sancho Panza, with other events such as good. The day that followed the night of the governor's round dawned. The mayordomo occupied what was lacking in writing to his gentleman what Sancho Panza did and said. Finally, the governor got up, and, by order of Dr. Pedro Recio, they made him breakfast with a little preserve and 4 drinks of cold water, which Sancho exchanged for a piece of bread and a bunch of grapes. With this sophistry Sancho suffered hunger, and such that in his secret he cursed the government and even the one who had been given it, but, with his hunger and with his preserve, he began to judge that day. And the first thing that was offered to him was a question that a stranger asked him, with all the mayordomo and the other acolytes present, which was, Sir, a mighty river divided two terms of the same manner, and your grace be attentive, because the case is important and somewhat difficult. I say, then, that there was a bridge over this river, and at the end of it, a gallows and a courthouse, in which there were usually 4 judges who judged the law, that the owner of the river, the bridge, and the lordship, which was in this form, if someone crosses this bridge from one part to another, he must first swear where and what he is going to, and if he swears true, let him pass, and if he tells a lie, he dies for it hanged on the gallows that is shown there, without any remission. Knowing this law and the rigorous condition of it, many passed, and then in what they swore it was seen that they were saying the truth, and the judges allowed them to pass freely. It happened, then, that, taking an oath from a man, he swore and said that for the oath he was taking, that he was going to die on that gallows that was there, and not to anything else. The judges noticed the oath and said, if we let this man pass freely, he lied in his oath, and, according to the law, he must die, and if we hang him, he swore that he would die on that gallows, and, having sworn true, by the same law he must be free. Ask yourself, Mr. Governor, what the judges will do to such a man, that even until now are doubtful and suspended. In my opinion, I will declare this business in 2 pallets, and it is like this: such a man swears that he is going to die on the gallows, and if he dies on it, he swore the truth, and by the established law he deserves to be free and that he pass the bridge, and if they don't hang him, he swore a lie, and by the same law he deserves to be hanged. I say, then, now, replied Sancho, that the part of this man who swore the truth be allowed to pass, and the part that told a lie be hanged, and in this way the condition of the passage will be fulfilled to the letter. Well, Mr. Governor, replied the questioner, it will be necessary for such a man to divide himself into parts, into a liar and a true one, and if he is divided, by force he has to die, and thus nothing of what the law asks for is obtained, and it is of express necessity that it be complied with. Come here, Señor good man, answered Sancho, this passenger you say, or I'm adjoined, or he has the same reason to die as to live and cross the bridge, because if the truth saves him, the lie condemns him equally, and, this being so, as it is, I am of opinion that you tell those gentlemen who sent you to me that, since the reasons for condemning or acquitting him are in a row, that they let him pass freely, since it is always more praiseworthy to do good or bad. That a precept came to mind, which was that, when justice was in doubt, I should opt for mercy. Give me food, and cases and doubts rain down on me, and I'll wake them up in the air. The mayordomo kept his word. It seemed to him to be guilty of conscience to starve such a discreet governor. When he got up from the tablecloths, a courier came in with a letter from Don Quixote to the governor. And it says like this: When I was expecting to hear news of your carelessness and impertinence, Sancho my friend, I heard about your discretion, for which I gave particular thanks to heaven. And I want you to notice, Sancho, that many times it is appropriate and necessary, by the authority of the office, to go against the humility of the heart, because the good adornment of the person who is placed in serious positions must be according to what they ask, and not according to what his humble condition inclines him. Dress well, a composite stick doesn't look like a stick. I am not saying that you wear pendants or finery, or that as a judge you dress like a soldier, but that you adorn yourself with the habit that your office requires, as long as it is clean and well composed. To win the will of the people you govern, among other things you have to do 2 things, 1, be well behaved with everyone, although I have already told you this once before, and the other, to procure the abundance of maintenance, that there is nothing that tires the hearts of the poor more than hunger and famine. Don't do a lot of pragmatics, and if you do them, make sure they are good, and, above all, that they are kept and fulfilled, that the pragmatics that are not kept, the same is that if they were not, on the contrary, they imply that the prince who had the discretion and authority to make them did not have the courage to keep them. Be the father of virtues and stepfather of vices. Do not always be rigorous, nor always soft, and choose the middle between these 2 extremes, which is the point of discretion. He visits the prisons, the butcher shops and the plazas, for the governor's presence in such places is of great importance. He consoles the prisoners, who await the brevity of his office. He is a bogeyman to the butchers, who at that time matched the pesos, and he is a scarecrow to the pleasurers, for the same reason. Do not show yourself, even if you happen to be, which I do not believe, greedy, womanizer or glutton, because, knowing the people and those who treat you your determined inclination, they will give you battery there, until you are knocked down in the depths of perdition. Write to your masters and show yourself grateful, that ingratitude is the daughter of pride, and one of the greatest sins that is known, and the person who is grateful to those who have done him good, gives an indication that he will also be grateful to God, that so much good did him and continues to do him. The Duchess sent one of her own with your dress and another present to your wife Teresa Panza. At times we wait for an answer. Let me know if the butler who is with you had anything to do with Trifaldi's actions, as you suspected, and you will give me notice of everything that happens to you. Your friend, Don Quixote de la Mancha. Sancho listened to the letter with great attention, and then Sancho got up from the table, and, calling the secretary, shut himself up with him in his room, and, without delaying it any longer, he wanted to reply to his lord Don Quixote. And the letter of reply ran as follows: My business is so busy that I have no room to scratch my head, or even cut my nails, and so, I bring them so grown that God will remedy it. In which I am hungrier than when the two of us walked through the jungles and through the uninhabited. The Duke, my lord, wrote to me the other day, informing me that certain spies had entered this island to kill me, and until now I have discovered no other than a certain doctor, called Dr. Pedro Recio. This such doctor says of himself that he does not cure illnesses when they exist, but prevents them, so that they do not come, and the medicines he uses are diet and more diet. Finally, he is starving me, and I am dying of spite. I have come to do penance, as if he were a hermit, and, since I don't do it of my own free will, I think that, after all, the devil will take me. Last night, walking around, I met a very beautiful maiden in a man's dress and her brother in a woman's habit. My housekeeper fell in love with the girl, and he chose her in her imagination for her wife, as he has said, and I chose the boy for my son-in-law. I visit the markets, as your grace advises me, and yesterday I found a shopkeeper who was selling new hazelnuts, and I found out that she had mixed with a hanega of new hazelnuts another of old, vain, and rotten ones. Apply them all for the children of the doctrine, who would know how to distinguish them well, and sentence her not to enter the square for 15 days. If my wife Teresa Panza writes to me, please pay the postage and send me the letter, for I have a great desire to know about the state of my house, my wife, and my children. And with this, God free your mercy from ill-intentioned charmers, and get me out of this government with good and in peace, which I doubt, because I intend to leave you with your life, as Dr. Pedro Recio treats me. Servant of your mercy, Sancho Panza, the governor. The secretary closed the letter and then dispatched it to the post office. And that afternoon Sancho spent doing some ordinances regarding the good government of what he imagined to be an insula. And he ordered that there be no regatones of supplies in the republic, and that they could put into it wine from the parts they wanted. He moderated the price of all footwear, especially shoes, because it seemed to him that it ran exorbitantly. He put a tax on the wages of the servants, who walked freely along the path of interest. He imposed very serious penalties on those who sang lascivious and decomposed songs. He ordered that no blind man should sing a miracle in couplets if he did not bring authentic testimony of being true. He made and created a bailiff for the poor, not to persecute them, but to examine them if they were, because in the shadow of feigned lameness and false sores walk thieving arms and drunken health. Chapter Li. Where the adventure of the second owner Dolorida, or Angustia, called by another name Dona Rodriguez is told. Cide Hammett recounts that when Don Quixote was already healed of his scratches, it seemed to him that the life he had in that castle was against the whole order of chivalry that he professed, and so he decided to ask the dukes for permission to leave for Zaragoza, whose festivities they came close, where he thought to win the harness that is won at such parties. And, being one day at table with the dukes, and beginning to put into action his intention and ask for permission, you see here at the wrong time enter through the door of the great room two women, covered in mourning from head to toe, and one of them, approaching Don Quixote, lay down at his feet, stretched out lengthwise. She showed herself to be what could never be thought, because she discovered the face of Dona Rodriguez, the mistress of the house, and the other in mourning was her daughter, the mocked of the rich farmer's son. Your excellencies are kind enough to give me permission to converse a little with this gentleman, because it is convenient to get out of the business in which the audacity of an ill-intentioned villain has put me. The Duke said that he would give it to him, and that he should converse with Señor Don Quixote as much as he wished. Before you slip through those ways, defy this unruly rustic, and make him marry my daughter, in keeping with the word he gave her to be her husband. Save your sighs, for I am in charge of your daughter's medicine, who would have been better off not having been so easy to believe lovers' promises, which, for the most part, are light to promise and very heavy to meet. And so, with the permission of the Duke my lord, I will then set out in search of that heartless young man, and I will find him, and I will challenge him, and I will kill him each and every time that he excuses himself from fulfilling the promised word. It is not necessary, answered the Duke, for your worship to go to the trouble of looking for the rustic of whom this good owner complains, that I consider him challenged, and I take it upon myself to let him know of this challenge, and that he accept him. And come to answer for yes to this my castle. He accepted such a challenge in the name of his vassal, and indicated the term from there to 6 days, and the field, in the square of that castle, and the weapons, the usual ones of the knights, lance and shield, and plated harness. Taking, then, this note, and the Duke having imagined what he had to do in the case, the mourning women left, and the Duchess ordered that from then on they should not be treated as her servants, but as adventurous ladies who came to visit. ask for justice at home, and so, they gave them a separate room and served them as foreigners. Being in this, here where the page entered the room who brought the letters and presents to Teresa Panza. And, taking out 2 letters, he placed them in the hands of the Duchess. She read it this way: Letter from Teresa Panza to the Duchess. I was very happy, my lady, with the letter that your greatness wrote to me, which I truly desired. That your lordship has made Sancho, my consort, governor, the whole place has been very pleased, since no one believes it. I, lady of my soul, am determined, with permission from your grace, to bring this good day into my house, going to the court to lie down in a car, to break the eyes of 1,000 envious people that I already have, and so, I beg your excellency to send my husband some money, and that it be something, because at court the expenses are big. Condolences, as much as it can, that this year no acorns have been harvested in this town. With all that, I send your highness up to half a bushel. Teresa Panza. Great was the pleasure that everyone received from hearing Teresa Panza's letter, and the Duchess asked Don Quixote if it would be good to open the letter that was coming for the governor, and she saw that it said in this way: Letter from Teresa Panza to Sancho Panza, her husband. I received your letter, my Sancho of my soul, and I promise and swear to you as a Catholic Christian that 2 fingers were not lacking to drive me crazy with happiness. Who could have thought that a goat herder would become governor of islands? My lady the Duchess will tell you of my desire to go to court. Look at yourself in it, and let me know of your taste, that I will try to honor you in it while riding in a car. The priest, the barber, the bachelor, and even the sacristan cannot believe that you are governor, and they say that everything is embellico, or things of enchantment, as are all those of Don Quixote your master. You send me some strings of pearls, if they are used in that island. Sanchica makes frog ends. She earns 8 maravedis horos every day, which she puts into a piggy bank to help her trousseau, but now that she is the daughter of a governor, you will give her her dowry without her working it. I await this answer and the resolution of my going to court. Your wife, Teresa Panza. And, to finish putting the seal, the courier arrived, the one that brought the one that Sancho sent to Don Quixote, which was also read publicly, which cast doubt on the governor's nonsense. Chapter LIII. Of the tired end and auction that the government of Sancho Panza had. To think that in this life the things of it must always last in one state is to think of what is excused, before it seems that she walks all round, I mean, around, spring follows summer, summer follows summer, summer follows autumn, and autumn follows winter, and winter follows spring, and so the time with this continuous wheel. Only human life runs to its end slightly more than time, without hoping to renew itself if it is not in the other, which has no limits that limit it. Being the 7th night of the days of his government in his bed, not fed up with bread or wine, but with judging and giving opinions and making statutes and pragmatics, when sleep, despite hunger, began to haunt him. Closing his eyelids, he heard such a great noise of bells and voices, that it seemed that the whole island was sinking. He went out to the door of his room, just in time when he saw more than 20 people coming along some corridors with flaming axes in their hands and with drawn swords, all shouting in loud voices, "Weapon, weapon, Mr. Governor, weapon! That infinite enemies have entered the island, and we are lost if your industry and courage do not help us. Arm yourselves then, your lordship, if you don't want to get lost and lose all this island." And at once they brought him 2 pavisas, which were provided with them, and they put another dress on top of his shirt, without letting him take another dress, one paves in front and another behind, and, through some concavities that they had made, they took out his arms, and they tied it very well with some strings, so that he was sandwiched and planked, straight as a spindle, without being able to bend his knees or move a single step. They put a spear in his hands, which he leaned against in order to stand up. When they had him thus, they told him to walk, and guide and encourage them all. The poor governor tried to move, and hit the ground with such a great blow that he thought he had broken to pieces. Extinguishing the torches, they returned to reinforce the voices, and to reiterate the weapon. With such great haste, going over poor Sancho, giving him infinite stabs on the pavisas, that if he didn't withdraw and shrink, sticking his head between the pavisas, the poor governor would have a very bad time. The worn-out Sancho, who listened to him and suffered everything, said among himself, "Oh, if my lord were served, that this island had just been lost, and I saw myself either dead or in such great anguish." He heard heaven calling for him, and, when he least expected it, he heard voices saying, "Victory, victory! The enemies are defeated. Come on, Mr. Governor, get up your grace and come to enjoy victory and distribute the spoils that have been taken from the enemies, for the courage of your invincible arm." "Lift me up," said the pained Sancho in a sorrowful voice. They cleaned him up, brought him the wine, untied the pavisas, he sat down on his bed and fainted from fear, fright, and work. He was already weighing those who made fun of him for having made it so heavy, but the fact that Sancho had come to himself tempered the sorrow that his fainting had given them. He began to get dressed, all buried in silence, and everyone looked at him and waited for what the rush with which he dressed would stop. He went to the stable and, approaching the dapple, he embraced him and gave him a kiss of peace on the forehead, and, not without tears in his eyes, he said to him, "Come here, my companion and friend of mine, and bearer of my labors and miseries, when I agreed with you and had no other thoughts than those that gave me the care of mending your rigging and sustaining your body, happy were my hours, my days, and my years, but, after I left you and climbed the towers of ambition and pride, 1,000 miseries, 1,000 jobs and 4,000 uneasiness have entered my soul." And, while he was saying these reasons, he was likewise packing the donkey, without anyone saying anything to him. Saddled, therefore, the dapple, with great pain and sorrow, climbed on top of him, and said, "Open the way, my lords, and let me return to my former freedom, let me go in search of the past life, so that I may be resurrected from this present death. I was not born to be a governor, nor to defend islands or cities from enemies who wanted to attack them. It is better for me to plow and dig, prune and harness the vineyards, than to give laws or defend provinces or kingdoms. How well each one is using the trade for which he was born. I want more to be fed up with gazpachos than to be subjected to the misery of an impertinent doctor who starves me. Your Mercedes, stay with God, and tell the Duke my lord that, naked I was born, naked I find myself, I neither lose nor win, I mean, I entered this government without a penny and I leave without it, quite the opposite of how the governors of other islands usually leave. It shouldn't be like that, Mr. Governor, said Dr. Recchio, that I will give your grace a drink against falls and bruises, which will later return him to his pristine integrity and vigor, and, in the matter of food, I promise your mercy to amend myself, letting you eat abundantly of everything you want. Late, piaches. Sancho replied. So I'll stop going like turning Turkish. I am from the lineage of the Panzas, who are all stubborn, and if once they say none, they must be none, even if they are even, in spite of everyone. By God, the great Sancho is right, said Dr. Recchio, and I am of the opinion that we let him go, because the Duke must be infinitely pleased to see him. They all came at it, and they let him go. They all hugged him, and he, weeping, hugged them all, and left them amazed, both at his reasons and at his determination, so resolute and so discreet. Chapter Live. Which deals with things related to this story, and not to any other. The Duke and Duchess resolved that the challenge that Don Quixote made to his vassal, for the cause already mentioned, go ahead, and, since the young man was in Flanders, where he had fled, not having Dona Rodriguez as his mother-in-law, they ordered a Gascon footman named Tozelos to be put in his place, first industrious him very well with everything they had of doing. And so, with joy and contentment, he waited for the 4 days, which were becoming, according to his desire, 400 centuries. We are going to accompany Sancho, who was between happy and sad, walking on the dapple to look for his master, whose company he liked more than being governor of all the islands of the world. He saw that 6 pilgrims with their staffs were coming along the road where he was going, these foreigners who beg for alms singing. He took out of his saddlebags half a loaf and half a cheese, with which he had been provided, and gave it to him. And he, putting his thumb on his throat and stretching his hand up, made them understand that he had no coin. And, biting the grey, he broke for them, and, as he passed, one of them having been looking at him very attentively, attacked him, throwing his arms around his waist, in a loud and very Castilian voice, he said, "Valame Dios! What do I see? Is it possible that I have in my arms my dear friend, my good neighbor Sancho Panza? How, and is it possible, brother Sancho Panza, that you don't know your neighbor Ricote the Moorish, shopkeeper of your place? Who made you a Frenchman, and how dare you go back to Spain, where if they catch you and find out you'll have plenty of bad luck? I will have the place to tell you what happened to me after I left our place, for obeying the side." And he burst out with a laugh that lasted an hour, without then remembering anything that had happened to him in his government, because about the time when eating and drinking, little jurisdiction tends to have care. Rico told him the following reasons, "You know well, O Sancho Panza, neighbor and friend of mine, how the proclamation that His Majesty ordered to be published against those of my nation put terror and fear in all of us. I ordered, therefore, in my opinion as prudent, as well as the one who knows that by such time they will take away the house where he lives and he provides himself with another one where he can move, I ordered, I say, to leave alone, without my family, from my town, and go find a place to take her comfortably and without the haste with which the others left. Finally, with just reason we were punished with the punishment of exile, soft and mild in the opinion of some, but in ours, the most terrible that could be given to us. I left, as I say, our town, I entered France, and, although they made us welcome there, I wanted to see everything. I went to Italy and arrived in Germany, and there it seemed to me that it was possible to live with more freedom, because its inhabitants do not see in many delicacies, each one lives as they want, because in most of it they live with freedom of conscience. Now it is my intention, Sancho, to remove the treasure that I left buried, which, being outside the town, I will be able to do without danger, and write or pass it from Valencia to my daughter and my wife, who I know is in Algiers, and outline how to bring them to some port in France, and from there take them to Germany, where we will wait for what God wants to do with us. I think you are going in vain to look for what you left locked up, because we had news that they had taken from your brother-in-law and your wife many pearls and a lot of money in gold that they had to search. That may well be it, replied Ricote, but I know, Sancho, that they didn't touch my confinement, because I didn't tell them where he was, fearful of some mischief, and so, if you, Sancho, want to come with me and help me get it out and cover it up, I'll give you 200 escudos, with which you can remedy your needs, which you already know. I know you have many. I would, replied Sancho, but I'm not greedy at all, that, to be it, a job I left this morning of the hands, where I could make the walls of my house of gold, and eat before 6 months in silver dishes. And what have you gained in government? Ricote asked. I have gained, responded Sancho, having known that I am not good at governing, if it is not a herd of cattle, and that the riches that are gained in such governments are at the cost of losing rest and sleep, and even the support, because in the islands the governors must eat little, especially if they have doctors who look after their health. I don't understand you, Sancho, who was going to give you islands to govern. Was there a lack of men in the world more capable for governors than you are? Shut up, Sancho, and come to your senses, and see if you want to come with me, as I told you, to help me get out the treasure that I left hidden, that in truth it is so much that it can be called a treasure, and I will give you what you live with, as I have told you. I've already told you, Ricote, replied Sancho, that I don't want to. Be content that you will not be discovered by me, and continue on your way in good time, and let me follow mine, that I know that what is well earned is lost, and what is bad, it and its owner. But tell me, were you in our place when my wife, my daughter, and my brother-in-law left? Yes, I did find it, answered Sancho, and let me tell you that your daughter turned out so beautiful that everyone in town came out to see her, and everyone said that she was the most beautiful creature in the world. She was crying and hugged all her friends and acquaintances, and all those who came to see her. Mainly, Don Pedro Gregorio was more passionate, that rich Mayorazgo young man that you know, who they say loved her very much, and after she left, he has never seemed in our place again, and we all think that he was after her to steal her, but so far nothing has been known. I always had a bad suspicion, said Ricote, that this gentleman loved my daughter, but, trusting in the value of my ricotta, he never gave me grief knowing that he loved her well, that you have already heard, Sancho, that the Moriscos seldom or never mixed for love with old Christians, and my daughter, who, I believe, tended to be more Christian than in love, would not be cured of the requests of that senior gentleman. God grant it, replied Sancho, it would be bad for both of us. And let me start from here, friend Ricote, I want to get to where my lord Don Quixote is tonight. God go with you, brother Sancho, my companions are already stirring, and it's also time for us to continue on our way. And then the two of them embraced, and Sancho got into his grey, and Ricote leaned close to his staff, and they moved away from him. Chapter LV. Of things that happened to Sancho on the way, and others that there is no more to see. Looking for a better place to settle down, he and the grey fell into a deep and very dark abyss that was between some very old buildings, and at the time of the fall, he entrusted himself to God with all his heart, thinking that he would not stop until the depths of the abysses, and it wasn't like that, because the dapple bottomed a little more than 3 states, and he found himself on top of it, without having received any injury or damage. I, said Sancho Panza then, and how unexpected events tend to happen at every step to those who live in this miserable world. Who would say that the one who yesterday saw himself enthroned governor of an island, commanding his servants and his vassals, today had to see himself buried in an abyss, without anyone to remedy him, neither servant nor vassal to come to his aid. Here we will have to perish from hunger, me and my ass, if we don't die before, he from bruised and broken, and I from sorrow. From here they will take my bones, when heaven is served that they discover me, clean, white and threadbare, and those of my good grey with them. Finally, having spent all that night in miserable complaints and lamentations, the day came, with whose clarity and brilliance Sancho saw that it was impossible of all impossibility to get out of that well without being helped. In this, he discovered a hole on one side of the chasm, capable of fitting a person through it, if he was overwhelmed and shrank. Sancho Panza went to it, and, crouching down, entered it and saw that inside it was spacious and long, and he could see it, because through what could be called a roof a ray of sunlight entered that revealed everything. And with a stone he began to crumble the earth of the hole, so that in a short space he made a place where the donkey could easily enter, as he did, and, taking him by the halter, he began to walk forward through that grotto, to see if there was any way out elsewhere. Here Cide Hamet Benengeli leaves him, and goes back to Don Quixote. It happened, then, that, going out one morning to impose himself and rehearse what he had to do in the trance in which he planned to see himself another day, giving Rocinante a rappel or lunge, he managed to put his feet so close to a cave, that, unless you pull the reins strongly, it would be impossible not to fall into it. In short, he stopped him and did not fall, and, coming a little closer, without dismounting, he looked at that depth, and, looking at her, he heard great voices within her, and, listening attentively, he was able to perceive and understand that the one who gave them said, "Ah, from above. Is there any Christian who will listen to me, or any charitable gentleman who mourns a sinner buried alive, or a wretched misruled governor?" It seemed to Don Quixote that he heard the voice of Sancho Panza. "I conjure you for everything that I can conjure for you as a Christian Catholic, that you tell me who you are, and if you are a soul in pain, tell me what you want me to do for you." "I am Don Quixote," replied Don Quixote, "the one who professes to help and help the living and the dead in his needs. Vote for such. That I am Sancho Panza's squire, and that I have never died in all the days of my life, but, having left my government for things and reasons that need more space to say them, last night I fell into this abyss where I am lying, the grey with me, who will not let me lie, because, for more reasons, he is here with me. Wait for me, I will go to the Duke's castle, which is near here, and I will bring someone who will take you out of this abyss, where your sins must have put you." Don Quixote left him, and went to the castle to tell the dukes about the event of Sancho Panza. Finally, as they say, they brought ropes and ropes, and, at the cost of many people and much work, they brought Dapple and Sancho Panza out of that darkness into the light of the sun. He raped a student, and said, in this way all the bad governors had to come out of their governments, as the sinner comes out of the depths of the abyss, starving, discolored, and penniless, I believe. Sancho heard it, and said, 8 days or 10 ago, murmuring brother, that I entered to govern the island they gave me, in which I did not see myself fed up with bread even for an hour, doctors have persecuted me in them, and enemies have bruised my bones, nor have I had a place to make bribes, nor to collect rights, and, this being so, as it is, I did not deserve, in my opinion, to go out this way, but man puts and God disposes, and God knows what is best and what is good for each one, and, like the time, like the tempt, and nobody says I will not drink this water, that where it is thought that there are bacons, there are no steaks, and God understands me, and that's enough, and I won't say more, even if I could. In these talks they arrived, surrounded by boys and many other people, at the castle. And then he went up to see his masters, before whom, kneeling, he said, Gentlemen, because your greatness wanted it that way, without any merit of mine, I went to govern your Barataria island, into which I entered naked, and I find myself naked, I neither lose nor win. If I have governed well or badly, I have had witnesses, who will say what they want. I have declared doubts, sentenced lawsuits, always starving. Enemies attacked us at night, and, having put us in great trouble, those of the island say that they came out free and with victory by the courage of my arm, may God give them such health as they say true. In short, in this time I have groped the burdens and obligations that governing brings with it, and I have found for myself that my shoulders will not be able to carry them. I have not borrowed from anyone, nor gotten involved in farming, and, although I intended to do some profitable ordinances, I did not do any, fearing that they would not be kept, that it is the same to do them as not to do them. I left, as I say, the island with no other accompaniment than that of my Dapple, I fell into a chasm, I came forward through it, until, this morning, with the light of the sun, I saw the exit from it. So, my lords Duke and Duchess, here is your governor Sancho Panza, who has earned in only 10 days that the government has had to know that he will not be given anything for being governor, not that of an island, but of all the world. I take a leap from the government, and I go to the service of my lord Don Quixote. The Duke embraced Sancho, and told him that it weighed on his soul that he had left the government so quickly, but that he would be lucky to be given in his state another job of less burden and more profit. The Duchess also embraced him, and ordered that they give him a gift, because she showed signs of coming badly beaten and worse off. Chapter LVI. Of the enormous and never-seen battle that took place between Don Quixote de la Mancha and the lackey Tozelos, in defense of the daughter of the owner, Dona Rodriguez. The dukes did not repent of the mockery made to Sancho Panza of the government they gave him, and more, that same day his butler came, and he told them point by point, almost all, the words and actions that Sancho had said and done in those days. After this, the story goes that the day of the postponed battle arrived, and, the Duke having once and many times warned his lackey Tozelos how he had to agree with Don Quixote to defeat him without killing or wounding him, he ordered that they be removed. The irons to the spears. Arrived, then, the fearful day, and the Duke having ordered that a spacious scaffold be built in front of the castle square. The first one who entered the field and staked out was the master of ceremonies, who groped the field, and walked him around, so that there would not be any deceit or hidden thing where he would stumble and fall. Then the owners came in and sat in their seats. Present Don Quixote in the lurch. A little while later, accompanied by many trumpets, the great footman Tozelos appeared from a part of the square, on a powerful horse, sinking it all, his visor covered and all raised, with strong and shining weapons. The brave combatant came, well informed by the Duke his lord of how he was to behave towards the brave Don Quixote de la Mancha, warned not to kill him in any way, but to try to flee the first encounter to excuse the danger of his death, which was true if from full to full I found him. Already at this time the Duke and Duchess were placed in a gallery that fell over the stockade. It was a condition of the combatants that if Don Quixote won, his opponent had to marry the daughter of Dona Rodriguez, and if he were defeated, his opponent of the word that was asked of him was freed from him, without giving any other satisfaction. Finally, Don Quixote, commending himself with all his heart to God our Lord and to the Lady Dulcinea del Toboso, was waiting for a precise signal of the attack. However, our lackey had different thoughts. He did not think but what I will now say. It seems that, when he was looking at his enemy, she seemed to him the most beautiful woman he had seen in his entire life. I say, then, that, when they gave the signal for the attack, our footman was transported, thinking about the beauty of the one who had already made mistress of his freedom, and thus, he did not attend to the sound of the trumpet, as Don Quixote did, that, as soon as he had heard her, when he attacked, and, as fast as Rocinante allowed. And, although Tozelos saw Don Quixote coming against him, he did not move a step from his post, before, with loud voices, he called the master of the field, who came to see what he wanted, said to him, "Sir, isn't this battle being fought because I marry, or don't marry, that lady?" "That's right," he replied. "Well," said the footman, "I am afraid of my conscience, and would put it in great charge if I went ahead in this battle, and so, I say that I give up and that I want to marry that lady later." The field miss was amazed at Tozelos' reasons, and, as he was one of the machine's knowers of that case, he didn't know how to answer a word. Don Quixote stopped in the middle of his career, seeing that his enemy did not attack him. The Duke did not know the occasion because he did not go forward in battle, but the field miss went to tell him what Tozelos was saying, at which he was left in suspense and extremely angry. While this was happening, Tozelos went to where Dona Rodriguez was, and said in a loud voice, "I, madam, want to marry your daughter, and I do not want to achieve through lawsuits or disputes what I can achieve through peace and without danger of death." Death. The brave Don Quixote heard this and said, "Well, this is how it is, I am free and released from my promise, marry in good time, and, since God our Lord gave it to you, Saint Peter bless you." Tozelos left, untying his helmet, they quickly took it off, and her lackey's face was revealed and patent. Seeing what Dona Rodriguez and her daughter, shouting loudly, said, "This is deception, this is deception. Tozelos, the Duke's lackey, my lord, has been put in the place of my true husband. Justice of God and of the king, of so much malice, not to say mischief." "Don't worry, ladies," said Don Quixote, "for this is neither malice nor rascality, and if it is, and it was not the Duke who was the cause, but the evil enchanters who persecute me, who, envious of my reaching the glory of this victory, have turned your husband's face into that of the one you say is Duke's lackey, take my advice, and, despite the malice of my enemies, marry him, who is undoubtedly the same one you wish to achieve as a husband." The Duke said, "Let's delay the marriage for 15 days, if you want, and keep this character locked up who has us doubtful, in which it could be that he returned to his pristine figure." To which Rodriguez's daughter said, "Whoever this is who asks me for a wife, I thank him, I want more to be the legitimate wife of a footman than not a friend and mocked by a gentleman, since the one who mocked me is not." In short, all these stories and events stopped Tozelos from collecting himself, until he saw what his transformation stopped at. They all acclaimed the victory for Don Quixote, and the rest were sad and melancholy to see that the long-awaited combatants had not been torn to pieces. The people went, the Duke and Don Quixote returned to the castle, they locked up Tozelos. Dona Rodriguez and her daughter were extremely happy to see that, one way or another, that case was going to end in marriage, and Tozelos expected nothing less. Chapter LVII. Which deals with how Don Quixote said goodbye to the Duke, and what happened to him with the discreet and cheeky Altisidora, the Duchess's maid. It already seemed to Don Quixote that it was good to get out of so much idleness as he had in that castle, that he imagined the lack that his person made in allowing himself to be locked up and lazy among the infinite gifts and delights that those gentlemen gave him as an errant knight, and so, one day he asked the dukes for permission to leave. They gave it to him, with signs that he greatly regretted his leaving them. The Duchess gave his wife's letters to Sancho Panza, who wept with them, and said, "Who would have thought that hopes as great as those that the news of my government engendered in the breast of my wife Teresa Panza would end in would I now return to the dragging adventures of my master Don Quixote de la Mancha? Indeed, I entered the government naked and I leave it naked, and thus, I will be able to say with sure conscience, that it is not little, naked I was born, naked I find myself, I neither lose nor win." This happened between them Sancho the day of departure, and, leaving Don Quixote, having taken leave of the dukes the night before, one morning he presented himself armed in the castle square. Sancho was on his grey, with his saddlebags, suitcase, and spare parts, very happy, because the duke's butler, the one who was the Trifaldi, had given him a purse with 200 gold crowns, to supply the necessities of the road, and this still had not happened. Don Quixote knew it. The easygoing and discreet Altisidora raised her voice, and in her pitiful tone she said, "Listen, bad knight, stop the reins a little, do not tire the flanks of your poorly governed beast. You took 3 dressing tables, and some garters, with legs that are equal to pure marble in smooth, white and black. Of that Sancho, your squire, the entrails are so stubborn and so hard, that Dulcinea of him does not leave the charm of him. Cruel Virna, fugitive Aeneas, Barabbas be with you, there you come." While the wounded Altisidora was complaining about the fate that has been said, Don Quixote looked at her, and without answering a word, turning his face to Sancho, he said, "For the century of your past, my Sancho, I implore you to tell me the truth. Tell me, do you happen to have the 3 dressing tables and the garters that this enamored maiden says?" To which Sancho replied, "I do have the 3 dressers, but the leagues, as for the hills of Ubeda." The duke said, "It does not seem right to me, Sir Knight, that, having received in this my castle the good reception that has been given to you in it, you have dared to take with you 3 dressing tables, at least, if at most the garters of my maiden, indications are of bad chest and samples that do not correspond to your fame. Give him back the garters, if not, I challenge you to mortal battle, without fear that charming scoundrels turn to me or change their faces, as they have done in Tozelos my lackey, the one who entered battle with you." "God forbid," responded Don Quixote, "that I unsheathe my sword against your most illustrious person, from whom I have received so many favors. I will return to the dressers, because Sancho says that he has them. Leagues is impossible, because neither I have received them nor has he. I, Sir Duke, have never been a thief, nor do I intend to be in my whole life, as God does not leave me out of his hand. This maiden speaks, as she says, as in love with her, for which I am not to blame, and so, I have nothing to ask for her pardon from her or your excellency from her, whom I beg to have a better opinion of me, and give me permission again to continue on my way." "God give you so good," said the Duchess, "Señor Don Quixote, that we always hear good news of your misdeeds. Just one more time I want you to listen to me, O brave Don Quixote." Then said Altisidora, "And it is that I ask your pardon for the theft of the garters, because, in God and in my soul that I have them on, and I have fallen into the carelessness of the one who, riding on the donkey, was looking for him." Don Quixote lowered his head and bowed to the dukes and to all the bystanders, and, turning the reins to Rocinante, Sancho following him on the grey, he left the castle, straightening his way to Zaragoza. Chapter LIX, which deals with how so many adventures multiplied over Don Quixote, that they did not allow each other to wander. Liberty, Sancho, is one of the most precious gifts that the heavens gave men. The treasures that the earth holds nor the sea conceals cannot be equaled with it. For freedom, as well as for honor, one can and must risk life, and, on the contrary, captivity is the greatest evil that can come to men. I say this, Sancho, because you have well seen the gift, the abundance that we have had in this castle that we left behind, for in the midst of those seasoned banquets and those drinks of snow, it seemed to me that I was stuck in the narrowness of hunger, because I did not enjoy them with the freedom that I would enjoy if they were mine, that the obligations of the rewards of the benefits and mercedes received are ties that do not allow the free spirit to roam free. With all this, it is not good that he should remain without thanks from us 200 gold crowns that the duke's butler gave me in a pocket. They saw that up to a dozen men, dressed as farmers, were eating on the grass of a green meadow. Next to them they had some like white sheets, with which they covered something that was underneath. He asked them what those canvases covered. "Sir, under these canvases there are some relief and entablature images that will serve in an altar piece that we make in our village. If you are served, I would be glad to see them." The first image, showed to be that of St. George on horseback, with the serpent coiled at his feet and the spear pierced through his mouth. "Let's see this other one." And it seemed to be that of San Martin on horseback, who split the cape with the poor. He asked that another canvas be removed. He discovered the image of the patron saint of the Spains on horseback. It was a good omen, brothers, to have seen what I have seen, because these saints and knights professed what I profess, which is the exercise of arms, but the difference between me and them is that they were saints and fought against the divine, and I am a sinner and fight against the human. They finished eating, loaded up with their images, and, saying goodbye to Don Quixote, continued on their journey. Sancho changed his conversation, and said to his master, "I am amazed, sir, at the ease of Altisidora, the Duchess's maid. She must have been bravely wounded and pierced by the one they call love." Warn, Sancho, that love neither pays respects nor keeps terms of reason in its speeches, and has the same condition as death, that it attacks the high palaces of kings like the humble huts of shepherds, and when it takes full possession the first thing he does from a soul is to remove fear and shame, and so, without her, Altisidora declared her wishes, which generated confusion in my chest rather than pity. And, having also heard that beauty is the first and main part that falls in love, your grace having none, I don't know what the poor thing fell in love with. Note, Sancho, responded Don Quixote, that there are two forms of beauty, one of the soul and another of the body, that of the soul prevails and is shown in understanding, in honesty, in good conduct, in liberality, and in good breeding, and all these parts fit and can be in an ugly man, and when you focus on this beauty, and not on that of the body, love is usually born with impetus and with advantages. I, Sancho, well see that I am not beautiful, but I also know that I am not misshapen, and it is enough for a good man not to be a monster to be well loved, as long as he has the gifts of the soul that I have told you about. While these arguments and talks were entering through a jungle that was out of the way, Don Quixote found himself entangled between some nets of green thread, which were stretched from one tree to another. And, wanting to go forward and break everything, suddenly two beautiful shepherdesses appeared before him, coming out from between some trees, at least, dressed as shepherdesses. Stop, Sir Knight, the passage, and do not break the nets, which are not for your harm, but for our entertainment, there they are. And, because I know that you have to ask us why they have been put on and who we are, I want to tell you in a few words. In a village that is up to 2 leagues from here, where there are many important people and many hidalgos and rich, among many friends and relatives it was agreed that with their sons, wives, and daughters, neighbors, friends and relatives, we would come to enjoy this place. Yesterday was the first day we arrived here, we have among these branches planted some shops. Last night we spread these nets of these trees to deceive the simple birds, which, eyed with our noise, come to hit them. If you like, sir, to be our guest, you will be entertained liberally and courteously, because for now in this place neither sorrow nor melancholy will enter. By the way, most beautiful lady, I praise the matter of your entertainments, and that of your offers I thank, and, if I can serve you, with the certainty of being obeyed, you can send it to me, because this is not my profession, but to show myself grateful and benefactor with all kinds of people. Oh, friend of my soul, then said the other girl, and what a great fortune has befallen us. Well, let him know that he is the bravest, and the most in love, and the most restrained that the world has. I will bet that this good man who comes with him is a certain Sancho Panza. Oh, said the other. Let us beg her, friend, to stay, that our parents and our brothers will infinitely like it. Do not get tired, ladies, of stopping me, because the precise obligations of my profession do not allow me to rest on any point. She arrived, in this, where the four were a brother of one of the two shepherdesses, also dressed as a shepherd. The gallant shepherd offered him, asked him to come with him to his tents. Don Quixote had to concede, and he did so. More than 30 people gathered in that place, of which they received not a little happiness, because they already had news of their history. They went to the shops, they found the tables set, rich, abundant and clean, they honored Don Quixote by giving him first place in them, they all looked at him and were amazed to see him. Among the major sins that men commit, although some say it is pride, I say it is ingratitude, sticking to what is usually said, that hell is full of the ungrateful. And if I cannot pay for the good deeds that they do to me with other works, I put in their place the desire to do them. And so, I say that I will sustain 2 calendar days in the middle of that royal road that goes to Zaragoza, that these misshapen young ladies who are here are the most beautiful and most courteous maidens in the world. Hearing which, Sancho said, is it possible that there are people in the world who dare to say and swear that this my lord is crazy? That he can say what my master has said, nor is there a knight-errant, no matter how brave he may be, that he can offer what my master here has offered. Don Quixote turned to Sancho and said, is it possible, O Sancho, that there is someone in the whole world who says that you are not stupid, covered in the same thing, with I don't know what borders of maliciousness and mischief? Who gets you into my things, and find out if I'm discreet or stupid? He shuts up and don't talk back to me, but saddle up, if Rocinante is unsaddled, we're going to put my offer into effect. Finally, having persuaded him not to put himself in such a demand, that they considered his grateful will well known and that no further demonstrations were necessary to know his courageous spirit, since those that in the history of his deeds referred to were sufficient, with all this Don Quixote came out with his intention, and, placed on Rocinante, embracing his shield and taking his spear, he stood in the middle of a royal road that was not far from the green meadow. Sancho followed him on his grey, with all the people of the pastoral herd, eager to see where his arrogant and unseen offer would end. Putting Don Quixote in the middle of the road, then, as I have told you, he wounded the air with such words, O you, passengers and wayfarers, knights, squires, people on foot and on horseback who pass through this road, or you have to pass in these next 2 days. Know that Don Quixote de la Mancha, knight-errant, is here to defend that all the beauties and courtesies of the world exceed those that are contained in the nymphs that inhabit these meadows and forests. For this reason, whoever thinks otherwise, come, I'll wait for you here. Shortly thereafter, a crowd of horsemen was discovered along the road, and many of them with lances in their hands, all walking in a crowd, in droves, and at great haste. They passed over Don Quixote, and over Sancho, Rocinante, and Dapple, hitting them all on the ground, sending him rolling on the ground. Sancho was crushed, Don Quixote frightened, Dapple and not very Catholic Rocinante bludgeoned, but, in the end, they all got up, and Don Quixote, in great haste, stumbling here and falling there, began to run after the herd, calling out, "Stop and wait, you rogue scoundrel, for only one knight awaits you." But the hurried runners did not stop for that, nor did they pay more attention to their threats than to the clouds of old. Don Quixote's fatigue stopped him, and, more angry than avenged, he sat down on the road, waiting for Sancho, Rocinante, and the Grey to arrive. They arrived, master and waiter got back upstairs, and, without saying goodbye to the pretended or distorted Arcadia, and with more shame than pleasure, they continued on their way. Chapter Lix, where the extraordinary event is told, which can be taken as an adventure, that happened to Don Quixote. The dust and weariness that Don Quixote and Sancho got from the ruthlessness of the bulls, was helped by a clear and clean fountain that they found among a cool grove. The two untidy master and waiter sat down. Sancho went to the confectionery of his saddlebags, and from them he took out what he used to call conjumia. Don Quixote did not eat, out of sheer regret, nor did Sancho dare to touch the delicacies before him. But, seeing that, carried away by his imagination, he did not remember to put the bread in his mouth, he did not open his, and, running over by all kinds of breeding, he began to pack in his stomach the bread and cheese that was offered to him. "Eat, friend Sancho," said Don Quixote, "sustain life, which is more important to you than me, and let me die at the hands of my thoughts and at the hands of my misfortunes. I, Sancho, was born to live dying, and you to die eating. This consideration dulls my teeth, dulls my molars, and numbs my hands, and takes away from everything in everything the desire to eat, so that I plan to let myself die of hunger, death the cruelest of deaths." "That way," said Sancho, without ceasing to chew quickly, "your grace will not approve of that saying, death to Marta, and die fed up. I, at least, do not intend to kill myself, I will waste my life eating until it reaches the end that heaven has determined for it. If you, O Sancho, would like to do for me what I am now going to tell you, and that is, while I sleep, obeying your advice, you would deviate a little far from here, and with Rocinante's reins, throwing the air your flesh, give yourself 300 or 400 lashes at a good account of the 3,000 and so many that you have to give yourself for Dulcinea's disenchantment, that it is no small pity that that poor lady is charmed by your carelessness and negligence. Your grace should know that whipping a man in cold blood is a tough thing, and even more so if the whipping falls on a body that is poorly supported and worse fed." Don Quixote thanking him, he ate something, and Sancho a lot, and they both went to sleep. They woke up a little late, went back upstairs and continued on their way. Hurrying to reach an inn that, apparently, was discovered a league away. It was time for dinner, they collected themselves at their stay. Sancho asked the guest what he had to give them for dinner. "What I really and truly have are 2 cows' nails that look like calves' hands, or 2 calves' hands that look like cows' nails, they are cooked with their chickpeas, onions, and bacon. I marked them from here for me," said Sancho. "And nobody touches them, that I will pay them better than another." The time for supper arrived, therefore, Don Quixote retired to his room. The guest brought the pot, just as he was, and sat down to supper very deliberately. It seems that in another room next to Don Quixote's, which was divided only by a thin partition, Don Quixote heard Don Quixote say, "For the life of your grace, Señor Don Geronimo, let us read another chapter while supper is brought." Of the second part of Don Quixote de la Mancha. He heard that the aforementioned Don Geronimo responded, "Why does your grace want us to read this nonsense, Señor Don Juan?" And whoever has read the first part of the history of Don Quixote de la Mancha, it is not possible that he would like to read the second. With all that, Don Juan said, it would be good to read it, because there is no book so bad that it doesn't have something good in it. What displaces me the most in this one is that it paints Don Quixote already out of love with Dulcinea del Toboso. Hearing which Don Quixote, full of anger and spite, raised his voice and said, "Whoever says that Don Quixote de la Mancha has forgotten, nor can he forget, Dulcinea del Toboso, I will make him understand with equal arms that he is going very far from the truth." "Who must it be," answered Sancho, "if not Don Quixote de la Mancha himself?" As soon as Sancho had said this, 2 gentlemen entered through the door of his room, and one of them, throwing his arms around Don Quixote's neck, said, "Neither your presence can disprove your name, nor can your name not accredit your presence, without a doubt, you, sir, are the true Don Quixote de la Mancha, as the author of this book that I am giving you here has done." and putting a book in his hands, which his companion was bringing, Don Quixote took it, and saying, "In this little that I have seen, I have found 3 things in this author worthy of reprehension. The first is some words that I have read in the prologue, the other, that the language is Aragonese, because perhaps he writes without articles, and the third, which further confirms him as ignorant, is that he errs and deviates from the truth in the most important part of the story, because here it says that the wife of Sancho Panza my squire is called Mari Gutierrez, and she doesn't call that, but Teresa Panza, and whoever errs in this most important part, it may well be feared that he errs in all the rest of the story." "Well, let's face it," said the gentleman, "this modern author does not treat you with the cleanliness that is shown in your person, paint yourselves as a dining room, and simple, and not at all funny, and very different from Sancho than in the first part of the story of your master is described." The 2 knights asked Don Quixote to go to his room to dine with them, since they knew very well that there were no things belonging to him in that sale. In the supper speech Don Juan asked Don Quixote what news he had about Mrs. Dulcinea del Toboso. And then he told them point by point the enchantment of Mrs. Dulcinea, and what had happened to her in the cave of Montesinos, with the order that the wise Merlin had given him to disenchant her, which was the whipping of Sancho. In these and other talks he spent a great part of the night, and, although Don Juan wanted Don Quixote to read more of the book, to see what he disagreed with, they could not put an end to it, saying that he took it for granted and confirmed it for all his foolishness, and that he did not want, if perhaps he came to news of its author that he had had it in his hands, be glad to think that he had read it, because of the obscene and clumsy things, the thoughts have to depart, the more the eyes. They asked him where his trip was leading. He replied that to Zaragoza, to be in the harness justs, which are usually held in that city every year. Don Juan told him that this new story told how Don Quixote, whoever he wanted, had found himself in it in a ring, lacking in invention, poor in letters, very poor in liveries, although rich in simplicities. "For the same reason," responded Don Quixote, "I will not set foot in Zaragoza, and thus I will expose the lie of this modern historian to the plaza of the world, and people will see how I am not the Don Quixote that he says." "He will do very well," said Don Geronimo, "and there are other justs in Barcelona, where Mr. Don Quixote will be able to show his worth." With this they took their leave, and Don Quixote and Sancho retired to their room, leaving Don Juan and Don Geronimo amazed to see the mixture he had made of his discretion and his madness. Don Quixote got up early, and, knocking on the partition of the other room, he bade farewell to his guests. Sancho paid the innkeeper handsomely.